Now, this might be a bit more familiar with to you, Bernadette, from the Dutch Care experience of Eden, the Eden alternative. Part of the work of Bill Thomas over in the United States. Dr. Bill Thomas was the geriatrician who created the Eden alternative, and then with others went on to develop the Greenhouse Project. Now, the greenhouses are places in the United States where a particular model of care has been instituted, and they utilise the Eden approach as well, but a particular style of care in these greenhouses where they have purpose-built houses in a very domestic scale, and they've staffed it in a uniquely different way as well. They, as you can see here, they're just street frontages. They put the bins out the front, cars are parked out the front. You can see that this looks like a normal home, doesn't it? It's got the look of it from the street. This looks exactly like a home, whereas this place that we're in at the moment has an institutional look about it, doesn't it? 2 stories, very big driveway in, lots of cars around, signs, emergency exit, all these sorts of things, emergency gathering point. In the greenhouses, and this is worth searching on the internet. Can I really encourage you to search on the internet to have a look at these greenhouses, because they will give you an understanding of a very different alternative way to create a dementia care environment. Not that you might be able to do exactly the same thing here, but it might open you up to different ideas, different ways of looking at it. Now, the ones that Sam Davis visited were in Tupelo, now Mississippi, I think. The greenhouse was the vision of Bill Thomas. The Mississippi Methodist Seniors Services were the first in practice to do this. Their philosophy of care was the Eden alternative, so this was the basic philosophy behind it. And they wanted to create a dementia-friendly physical design, so they built 10 of these purpose-built houses, these greenhouses. And they look like many other homes in the surrounding area, and they have 10 to 12 residents per house. Now, often the argument against doing something this small scale is that they're very expensive to staff and to run because you're duplicating services. This more are still functioning so many years on, 15 more years on. Personal care workers with additional 300 hours of specialised training. They were known as Shabazz. That was just the name they gave to these particular staff who were trained for this function. So they weren't personal carers, they weren't nurses, they were a meld of both. Some were personal carers, some were nurses by training, but they were given this 300 hours of training, which is quite a lot. They were personal care workers with this additional 300, and the running costs were comparable to an aged care home, a normal nursing home. The flattened hierarchy of management with the Shabazz managing the household, supported by nurses and therapists. So the nurse would visit, and as the people became more heavy in their nursing needs, the nurse would still visit, but the Shabazz was the person who did all of the other work in the house. And so that they were living in a house. It's like having a house here, house next door, another house. Imagine 10 houses in a neighbourhood, all linked. Well, linked by the fact that you can move from one to the other easily. Organisation. So a very flattened hierarchy. And whoever was the house leader, that role would move around as time went on. But the nurse was a visitor who would move. You would have a nurse across, maybe 3, 4, 5 houses. I can't remember exactly how many there were. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So as the care needs developed, and they might be admitted at what we would traditionally call low care, and they would then stay there, and their care needs would escalate. As their needs, they became much more nursing needs, then the nurse would visit in relation to those. But the shabaz was the person who would care for the household, cleaning, cooking, personal care, the whole lot. And people in the house would have responsibilities as well. So they functioned as a little community. They were self-managed teams, and they would rotate the duties quarterly. They had a team coordinator, and there was liaison between the team and families, volunteers, community members and other members of staff, including clinical support. And the food coordinator, housekeeping coordinator, scheduling coordinator and the care coordinator were all the, if you like, the other roles that were rotated around the group. And they would monitor the team's compliance with care plans and their effectiveness at meeting residents' needs, ensuring that care has been provided and documented. So there was all of those external organisational supports and requirements, but none of that got in the way of the fact that these shabaz were able to deliver the care that was required in these environments. So a domestic scale is possible, and with comparable costs. So food was prepared within the house, often with residents participating in the preparation of that food as well. And the cleaning and so on, the cleaning duties, etc., would be part of the ongoing work of the house and the shabaz in the house as well with the resident. In an evaluation of it, there were high satisfaction levels from residents, family and from staff. There were fewer complaints at state level, so there were fewer external complaints. There was no unexplained weight loss and almost no nutritional supplement use, which is interesting, isn't it? Mm. You know, at Bond Beach, as part of our study, the dementia study, we've had a great reduction in the use of supplements, which is quite remarkable. There was less decline in activities of daily living. It's interesting. Staff turnover of less than 10%. It's pretty standard in aged care to have turnover of double that. 20%. More, in fact, in some places. So that's a big cost saving. Huge. There's no transfer-related back injuries in staff or elders. So why would that be, do you think? No transfer-related back injuries.
One would be able to do the...
Could have been more mobile. It might be.
Qualified staff as well, because they have trained the hours of working, so must be very qualified staff.
So better trained? So they're more settled, maybe, the residents, yeah. Yeah, that's right. So maybe these people were, the setting enabled them to be transferred there, or more effectively, safer. Less prevalence of depression. This is a big one. Depressed people are heavier to care for. There's less incontinence without a toileting plan. Less use of antipsychotics without a relevant diagnosis. These are huge things. Incontinence is a big expense to the organisation, not just in continence aids, but also in time. And a lot of responsive behaviour occurs when people are being taken to the toilet. It's when there's a lot of anger. There's less use of antipsychotics without a relevant diagnosis. This is a big problem because morbidity, in other words, the likelihood of death, is much greater on antipsychotics. So less antipsychotics, less likelihood of early death. Okay, so these are real benefits. This is a real plus, these greenhouses. What are your thoughts about it? What's your impression? Do you think it would work here in Australia if we were to do it?
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah?
Why not?
Worth giving a go?
Oh, yeah.
What would need to happen for it to flourish, for it to take off?
Capital outlay.
Pardon?
Capital outlay.
Capital outlay to build the homes? Yeah, sure. We put a lot of expense into building aged care homes these days. Do you think it'd be worthwhile giving something like this a go?
Yeah. Because like you have those sort of places where the retirement villages now, they're just better closed, like their own community there.
Yeah.
So if you do, you know, probably scale, you might want to go like more channels, you might have the whole village, you know, that way.
Yeah.
I can't see why it couldn't work.
Oh, okay.
Reason.
It should be possible to do in Australia, I would have thought.
Yeah, if they can do it overseas, we can do it.
Yeah, exactly. The strengths of these examples, they're home-like features. There's a lot of choice and flexibility for the resident involved in these. Social care tends to dominate. So even though the person's nursing needs might be high, social care is still part of the picture. In other words, the life that somebody leads is still part of the picture. They might have strong nursing needs, but they're still supported to live well. And this is an important feature of it, because often what we do is we simply look after the nursing needs and we let the life slide. They're part of a wider community. These homes look like homes in a normal suburb. There's no sense of them being a place that involves stigma or separateness. There's family involvement much more strongly in these homes, and there's also meaningful activities that are well thought out. There's a very strong relationship between staff and residents. And this is a hallmark of these models of care, is the strength of the relationship between the residents and the staff. It's not simply there that staff are there as a function to perform these functions. They're actually there to relate well to the people they care for.